Hello, thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Uzamat Chalanu and this is my IST440 presentation. Okay, the goal of this discovery and this exercise is to see if there is any sort of correlation between the set values for a specific company and its buy, hold, return values, which is basically the indicator of positive growth or value for a given company. All right, so my goal is to see if there's any correlations or if there's any indicators that will actually show or that we can use to predict possible BHR values for a theoretical company. So the first means that I used in order to narrow down the values that I'm going to be using for my discoveries is a simple backwards regression. Now with backwards step regressions, the main goal of this process is to eliminate each of the analogous values one by one until we're left with a set of just significant areas that we can use, and then we'll do our visual analysis of their data to see if any of those are good indicators based on the graphs that we produce. So for this analysis, I'm going to be using the program called Minitab to both build out our regressive models and do our visual analysis. All right, so when evaluating our backwards step regression, the first value that gets pulled off is the PERMCO, because it has the highest p-value. And in this, p-values above 0.05 are clearly statistically insignificant. All right, so we eliminate the first highest one, and then we rerun a multiple regression to see which one comes out next. After that one, the industry characteristic of each company, that goes away because it has a 0.994 p-value, significantly high. And then the third step, we find that the DSR value, that one gets thrown out because of its 0.746 p-value. So in step 4, the leverage attribute gets kicked out clearly due to its 0.622 p-value. After that, with a p-value of 0.452, cash TA gets kicked out. Now these are extremely high, and which is the main reason why the app attribute also gets kicked out, basically due to its higher than average 0.235 coefficient, rather p-value. Okay, now for the final elimination step, we're going to eliminate the DII value because it has 0.256 p-value, which is again the highest inside that step. So by step 8, we're left with only the year-month attribute, Tobin's Q, ROA, age, and PERMNO value. That one being the highest one when we get to this step, but we'll keep it in just to continue with the rest of the data to see if there's any significance in that regard. All right, so let's do an analysis of the variances among the remaining attributes. Now, with the exception of PERMNO, the two most significant values are Tobin's Q and ROA, just because of their near zero p-value. Now, those are could be the ones that are primary. Those are the ones we're going to actually use to hopefully find a significance inside our data and be able to use these as valuable predictors of BHR for a given situation if we have that information, the Tobin's Q and the ROA. Now, if you look at the model summary, it's important to actually note that the R-squared values that we're getting basically are very, very low. We're getting between 4 and 6%, which means that this data or the values that we're getting, our predictive abilities only describe about 6% of the data, which means it's pretty much wild. This isn't particularly good going into our final visual analysis, but it's going to be an indicator of possible just randomness of outcomes, at least in terms of BHR. Okay, so with all of the remaining 5 variables included, when we build out our regression equation, be it that it only describes about 5 or so % of the data with that significance, we see that some coefficients, especially, this is going to generally be a negative trending line. Our main coefficient is negative, of course, so that's going to be bring things down just to kind of compensate. But the values with the higher significance, at least the higher coefficients, are the ROA. And then following that is Tobin's Q, which is indicative of their more potent ability to predict the trends in BHR, at least when we go inside and actually do this visual analysis. Okay, so now when looking at this visually, basically we exported some scatter plots of the BHR to each of those significant variables, being age, year, month, Tobin's Q, PERMNO, and ROA. Clearly, given our data and the conclusions that we drew just from our regression, our backwards regressions, and our analysis of the variances, we can see that the values are nearing zero consistency, as in just completely consistent, completely horizontal. For age specifically, despite the 3 outliers, most of the values generally hold a horizontal trend. Same with the year and the month. At the end, there was a little bit more verticality there, but you still see most of the values maintaining that line in that consistent area on the lower portion of the graph. Now let's just skip around and go straight to the 4th entry, which is the PERMNO, and just look at that before we go into Tobin's Q or ROA. Now with that value, we see again the horizontal line that is more consistently at the latter end of PERMNO and in the beginning, but still maintains that consistency right through. Now for the values of Tobin's Q and ROA, we do see large clusters in specific areas of that table. Now that's where we're getting our higher areas of variances, or at least our higher coefficients and our higher significance. Though, still consistently, within those areas, specifically for Tobin's Q, if you see the values lean closer towards lower BHR values and towards the lower values of Tobin's Q, putting it right in that third quartile area. But still, within those the respective plots and the respective clusters, you find that the values trend towards horizontal movement, though with a little bit of verticality, a little bit of positive trending on the trend line itself. ROA specifically is a lot less significant, at least a lot less, has a lower slope in its trend line. And its values clustered more towards the middle, towards that 0 value for ROA. But still, mostly horizontal, which, again, further solidifies my belief that the values, or at least the data points that we have, are not good indicators of BHR or buy-hold return values for any given company. So unfortunately, in conclusion, given the data that we have and the many explorations that I've done here, I can't confidently say that any of these data points actually produce any significant correlation that would help predict the buy hold return value. All of them are pretty much consistent with time and generally just yield a value that's just completely random, given a data set. So that being said, none of these values or none of the values inside the actual data set that we were given are good indicators of the BHR, and the correlations are weak at best to say anything. So we just kind of have to close that book right there and just look for other trends, but these are not good indicators, judging by the statistical analysis that we ran. So I thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. I hope it was valuable. I hope you gained a lot of information, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.